It was 11:42 on a Saturday night. Tax season. My office was dead silent, the only light coming from my dual monitors. I opened my phone, looking for a distraction. I found a war declaration. The photo hit my feed like a subpoena. My brother, Tyler, grinning in a tuxedo. My ex-best friend, Jessica, wearing white. They were toasting on a snow-covered deck. I stopped scrolling. I zoomed in. That wasn't a hotel. That was the Aspen Ski Lodge I co-owned with my parents. The same lodge my father swore was closed for catastrophic plumbing repairs. I wasn't invited, but looking at the custom ice sculptures in the background, my bank account certainly was. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Hysteria is an inefficiency I can't afford. I simply switched tabs. I went from Instagram to the schematic drawings I kept in my cloud drive. I zoomed in on the photo again. Behind the happy couple, beneath the feet of 200 uninvited guests, was a brand new, heated après-ski deck. Mahogany finish. Custom recessed lighting. 3 weeks ago, my father had called me in a panic, claiming the lodge's main water line had burst. He said the foundation was at risk. He needed $20,000 immediately for emergency plumbing. I sent it. The wire transfer cleared within the hour because I trusted him. Looking at that photo, the forensic evidence was undeniable. The water line was fine. The foundation was solid. My $20,000 hadn't gone into the ground. It was currently under my brother's dress shoes. They hadn't fixed a leak. They had built a stage for their golden boy. I felt a cold, metallic click in my chest. It was the sound of a switch flipping. The daughter part of me, the part that craved their approval, the part that wanted to be included, quietly died. The forensic auditor took over. I sat up straighter in my ergonomic chair. Knuckles cracked. I logged into the business banking portal. The dashboard loaded. It was a crime scene. The available credit on the business line, the one secured by my CPA license, was nearly maxed out. At the top of the pending transactions list sat a charge that made my breath hitch, not from sorrow, but from shock at the audacity. $48,000. Alpine Luxury Events. It was time-stamped 4 hours ago. It was pending. I looked at the time. It was midnight in Aspen. The reception was in full swing. The bar tab was probably still open. They were drinking champagne on my credit, dancing on my deck, celebrating a union I wasn't allowed to witness, funded by a sister they didn't respect. Auditors don't weigh pros and cons when they spot fraud, they execute protocols. Step 1. The money. I clicked on the $48,000 charge. I selected dispute transaction. Reason for dispute, unauthorized user/fraud. Submit. Step 2. The cards. I navigated to card management. Card ending in 4512. Card holder. Thomas, my father. Status. Active. Freeze. Card ending in 8900. Card holder, Tyler. Active. Freeze. Reporting them lost and stolen ensured they couldn't be reactivated over the phone. Step 3. The environment. Money takes time to decline. I needed something immediate. I needed them to feel my presence in the room. I opened the Smart Lodge app. I had installed the system myself 2 years ago. I was the master admin. The live telemetry told the story. Interior temperature, 72 degrees. Lighting, party ambience. Audio system, active. Volume level, 90%. Smart locks, disengaged. I accessed the storm security protocol. It was a setting designed for blizzards, meant to lock down the facility and conserve power. It kills the audio to save the backup batteries. It floods the exterior with high-intensity security lighting. It engages the magnetic deadbolts on every exit. My cursor hovered over the execute button. The scene played out in my mind. The music dying, the harsh, blinding security lights washing out the romantic candlelight, the sudden, confused silence of 200 people wondering why the party just turned into a prison. Click. On my screen, the status indicators turned from green to red. Disabled. Lighting. Security mode. Locks. Engaged. I sat back in the darkness of my office. There was no smile. Auditors don't smile when they find the discrepancy. They just close the file and prepare the report. In Aspen, the music had just stopped, but my work was just beginning. I sat in the quiet hum of my office, watching the notifications pile up on my phone like snowdrifts against a door. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to read the texts to know what they said. I knew the script. I had been rehearsing for this moment for 5 years. Ever since I wired $50,000 to keep my parents from losing their home. That was the first payment, the down payment on a debt that would never be settled. I swiveled my chair away from the screens and looked out at the city lights. It was easier to look at the past when you weren't staring directly at the evidence. My family wasn't evil in the way movie villains are evil. They were just expensive, emotionally and literally. It started small. A missed credit card payment here, a temporary loan there, then it became structural. I was the safety net. Tyler was the trapeze artist. He was allowed to fall because I was always there to catch him. I remembered the day I bought the lodge. It was supposed to be an investment, a way to secure my parents' retirement so they wouldn't have to rely on my checkbook forever. The deposit came from my personal savings. The 30-year mortgage bore my signature alone. I paid for the renovations to make it rentable. Tyler showed up on opening weekend with a case of beer and a group of friends, claiming the master suite before I even had a key cut. My father had clapped him on the back and said, "Look at this place, son. It's all for you kids, for us." That was the lie. It wasn't for us. It was for them. I was just the bank. I was the silent partner in my own life. I thought about the missed vacations, the 80-hour weeks during audit season when my eyes burned and my hands cramped, the time I skipped my own best friend's bachelorette party because I had to cover an emergency tax bill for the family business. I looked back at the photo on my screen, frozen now, a static image of betrayal. My mother was smiling in the background, a champagne flute in her hand. She looked so proud. Not of me. Never of me. She was proud of Tyler. Proud that he had pulled off such a beautiful wedding. And then it hit me. The realization was colder than the mountain air. It wasn't just theft. It was something deeper, something twisted and foundational. To my parents, my money wasn't mine. In their minds, because they had raised me, fed me, and housed me for 18 years, they owned shares in my success. My salary wasn't my property, it was their dividend. They didn't see stealing $48,000 from my business line as a crime. They saw it as a withdrawal from the family account. They felt entitled to it. They believed that my role, my only role, was to facilitate Tyler's happiness. If I had money and he didn't, it was a clerical error they were simply correcting. This was financial incest. It was a complete erasure of my boundaries, my autonomy, my very self. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a wallet, a resource, a thing to be harvested when the golden child needed to shine. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Just one. It was hot and angry. Emotion is just bad data in an audit. I deleted it. I turned back to my desk. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the cool, hard clarity of a spreadsheet. I opened a new file. I named it Audit Log Family. If they wanted to treat our relationship like a transaction, fine. I would give them the most thorough accounting they had ever seen. I would itemize every dollar, every slight, every stolen moment, and I would make sure the final balance was zero. The fallout arrived in waves, predictable and hysterical. First came the confusion. At 12:15, a text from Tyler pinged on my lock screen. "Hey Sid, weird thing. The business card just got declined for the bar tab. Must be a limit thing. Can you call the bank and fix it? People are waiting for drinks." I watched the message sit there, innocent and demanding, like a child asking for a toy. 5 minutes later, another one. "Sid, you awake?" It's kind of embarrassing. The manager is getting annoyed. "Just authorize the charge?" 10 minutes later, the confusion curdled into panic. My phone started vibrating with a call from my father. I let it ring. He called again and again. I imagined him stepping out of the ballroom, away from the noise, his face flushed with alcohol and irritation, trying to handle a technical glitch. Then came the voicemail. His voice was tight, the reasonable dad mask slipping. "Sydney, pick up. This isn't funny. The catering manager is threatening to stop service. We have guests here. Important guests. Jessica's parents are wondering what's going on. Fix this now. Fix it." That had been my job description for a decade. Fix the taxes, fix the loans, fix the mistakes Tyler made because he was too creative for details. I didn't fix it. I archived the voicemail. Then the avalanche truly broke. The security system alert came through at 12:40. Security mode activated. I knew what was happening. The lights had just come on. The music had died. The doors were locking. My mother's text arrived a minute later. All caps. A digital scream. "What are you doing? The lights just went crazy. You are ruining your brother's wedding. This is petty and vindictive. We didn't invite you because we knew you would bring drama, and look what you're doing. Turn it off. We didn't invite you because you bring drama." There it was. The truth, stripped of any polite veneer. They hadn't forgotten me. They hadn't lost the invite. They had discussed it. They had decided my presence, my very existence, was an inconvenience to their perfect image. But my money, my credit, my property, those were welcome guests. I read the message twice. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was reading a case study about someone else's dysfunction. Another text from Tyler, this one stripped of the "Hey Sid" niceties. "You jealous bitch. You really think this is going to make us want you around? You're dead to me. Turn the money back on or I swear to God." Threats, insults, demands. Not a single question, not a single why. Not a single moment of reflection on the fact that they were standing in a stolen venue, drinking stolen wine. They showed zero remorse, only entitlement. They truly believed they had a right to my resources, regardless of how they treated me. In their minds, I was the villain for cutting off the supply. I took a screenshot of every text. I saved every voicemail. I wasn't just being petty. I was gathering evidence of intent. I sent a single reply to the group chat they had unknowingly created. The cards are frozen due to suspected fraud. Unauthorized use of business assets is a crime. The security system is automated for breach protection. You are trespassing. I suggest you leave before the police arrive. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. The silence that followed was heavy, but for the first time in my life, it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. Sunday morning didn't bring regret. It brought focus. I was in my office by 8, a fresh pot of coffee brewing, my phone still silenced against the frantic buzzing of my family's rage. They were probably driving back from the mountains now, hungover, angry, and blaming me for the cold, dark end to their perfect night. Let them. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was an auditor, and I had work to do. I opened a new spreadsheet. Forensic Audit Lodge, 2020 negative, 2024. I started pulling records, not just the recent wedding charges, but everything. 5 years of bank statements, credit card bills, contractor invoices. It was worse than I thought. The emergency plumbing from 3 years ago? A receipt for a custom hot tub installation. The roof repair invoice from last winter? It matched the exact cost of a ski trip Tyler took with his fraternity brothers. I found charges for landscaping that coincided with my mother's garden club hosting a retreat. I found maintenance fees that were actually payments for a luxury SUV lease in my father's name. They hadn't just stolen the wedding. They had been bleeding the business dry for years. Every time I worked a weekend to cover a shortfall, every time I skipped a bonus to keep the lodge afloat, I wasn't saving the family asset. I was funding their lifestyle. I felt a cold burn in my stomach. I had been so proud of being the responsible one, the one they could count on. But I wasn't responsible. I was a mark. I picked up my office phone and dialed a number I had saved for nuclear options. Elena speaking. Her voice was sharp, professional, terrifying. Elena was a corporate litigation attorney who specialized in partnership disputes. We had met at a networking event where she made a grown man cry over a breach of contract. Elena, it's Sydney. I need to retain you. Immediately. What's wrong? I need to audit a partnership. And I need to prepare a civil suit for embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Who's the partner? My parents. And my brother. There was a pause on the line. Then a soft exhale. Okay, send me everything. I'll clear my Monday. 6 hours dissolved into the rhythm of investigation. Receipts were scanned. Discrepancies were highlighted in neon yellow. I drafted a timeline of every lie, every emergency, every guilt trip that ended with a wire transfer. When I was done, I had a document that was 40 pages long. It wasn't a diary, it was an indictment. I drafted a formal notice of audit. No emotional language. No, how could you? Just facts. To Thomas and Patricia, effective immediately, a full forensic audit of the lodge's finances has been initiated. Preliminary findings indicate unauthorized expenditures totaling $214,000 over the last 5 years, including, but not limited to, unauthorized event, wedding reception, $48,000. Unauthorized renovation deck expansion, $20,400. Misappropriated maintenance funds, $145,600. You have 48 hours to provide documentation proving these were legitimate business expenses. Failure to do so will result in immediate legal action to recover funds and dissolve the partnership. I hit print. The pages slid out of the tray, warm and crisp. I stared at the stack of paper. This was my love letter. This was the only language they understood. I wasn't asking for an apology. I was serving them a bill, and I was going to collect every single cent. It was 3 a.m. when I found the smoking gun. It wasn't a receipt for catering or a hidden invoice for flowers. It was a PDF file buried deep in a subfolder labeled MISC Admin, innocuous enough to be ignored by anyone who wasn't looking for a reason to burn the world down. The file name was Lodge, Equity, Mod, Oct. I clicked it open. It was a loan modification agreement from 6 months ago, a secured line of credit taken out against the equity of the lodge. The amount was staggering, $100,000. The stated purpose was capital improvements, but I had already traced the funds. They hadn't gone into the building. They had been wired directly to a Shell LLC registered to my brother, Tyler, a cash injection for his failing tech startup that he swore was profitable. I scrolled to the bottom of the document. There, on the guarantor line, was a signature, Sydney Vance. It looked exactly like my signature. The loop of the S, the sharp cross of the T. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn I signed it. But I knew better. I looked at the date next to the signature, October 14th. A quick cross-reference with my digital calendar confirmed the impossible. The entry stared back at me in bright blue, London International Tax Symposium. I walked to my safe, I pulled out my passport, I flipped through the pages until I found the stamp, Heathrow entry October 12th, Heathrow exit October 18th. I was 4,000 miles away when this document was signed. I sat back down, the room spinning slightly. They hadn't just misused funds. They hadn't just borrowed without asking. They had forged my signature on a federal loan document. They had committed bank fraud, and they had done it to leverage my asset, to fund Tyler's delusions. But how? A loan of this size requires a notary. It requires a bank officer to verify identity. I scrolled back up to the notary block. I looked at the loan officer's name, stamped on the approval line. Jessica Miller, the bride. My ex-best friend, the vice president of lending at the regional bank where we held the lodge's accounts. The air left the room. It wasn't just my family. It was a conspiracy. Jessica hadn't just stolen my brother. She had facilitated a felony. She had used her position at the bank to push through a fraudulent loan, bypassing the identity checks because she knew the family. She knew I was out of the country. It was the perfect crime, executed by the people who were supposed to love me. This changed everything. This wasn't a civil dispute anymore. This wasn't about getting reimbursed for a party. This was about prison time. Federal prison time. For my father, for my brother, for the woman in the white dress. The document on my screen wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a weapon. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt a flicker of fear. Not for myself, but for them, because they had no idea what they had just handed me. I picked up my phone and texted Elena. I have proof of forgery and bank fraud involving a loan officer. The amount is 6 figures. Prepare the ultimatum. We meet them tomorrow. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the sun come up over the city, holding my passport in one hand and the printout in the other. The ledger was balanced, and the cost was going to be their freedom. They arrived at 10 a.m. sharp on Monday morning. My father, my mother, Tyler, and Jessica. They looked like a wreck. My father's eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened. My mother was pale, clutching her designer bag like a shield. Tyler looked hungover and furious. Jessica, usually so composed in her tailored suits, looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. They expected to see me at home, probably in my pajamas, crying over old photo albums. Instead, they found themselves in the glass-walled conference room of Elena's law firm, 40 floors above the city. I was sitting at the head of the mahogany table. Elena stood behind me, looking like a shark in Louboutins. This is ridiculous. Tyler started throwing himself into a chair. You ruined the reception, Sid. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? The lights went out during the first dance. We had to explain to everyone that there was a power outage. Sit down, I said. My voice was calm. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like the person I had become over the last 48 hours. Don't talk to your brother like that, my mother snapped. We are here to fix this mess you created. You need to unlock the accounts. Now, we have vendors to pay. There are no accounts to unlock, I said. They're frozen pending a federal investigation. The room went dead silent. What are you talking about? My father asked, his voice wavering slightly. I slid the first folder across the table. The forensic audit, the 40 pages of theft, the wedding, the deck, the ski trips, the car payments. You have misappropriated over $200,000 from the business partnership over the last 5 years, I said. That is embezzlement. That is a crime. We're family, my mother cried. It's family money. You can't embezzle from your own family. The IRS disagrees, Elena said from behind me. And so does the state prosecutor. But we can settle this, I continued. I am willing to overlook the embezzlement. I am willing to dissolve the partnership quietly. On one condition, I slid the second document across the table. The loan modification. The one with the date October 14. Jessica gasped. She recognized it instantly. She reached for it, but my father got there first. He stared at the signature. He looked at the date. He looked at me. You forged my signature on a federal loan document, I said, looking directly at Jessica. You used your position at the bank to bypass security protocols. You leveraged my asset, my credit, my name to fund a $100,000 loan that went straight into Tyler's pocket. That's bank fraud, Elena added. That's a felony. Mandatory minimum sentencing for everyone involved, the applicants who signed it and the officer who approved it. The color drained from Jessica's face so fast I thought she might faint. She looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at the floor. I didn't. I thought you knew, Jessica stammered. Tyler said you agreed. He said you were just busy. You didn't call me, I said. You didn't email me. You forged my name. This goes away, I said, leaning forward. All of it. The fraud, the embezzlement, the prison time, it all goes away, under one condition. What do you want? My father whispered. He looked old, defeated. I am forcing the sale of the lodge, I said. We list it today. We sell it at market value. From the proceeds, we pay off the fraudulent loan immediately. Then you reimburse me for the wedding, for the deck, for every dollar you stole. And then Whatever is left, if there's anything left, you can split. But that's our retirement, my mother sobbed. That's everything we have. No, I said. That was my investment. You spent your retirement on a party. I stood up. You have until 5 p.m. to sign the listing agreement, or I take this file to the district attorney. I walked out of the conference room. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they would do. They would sign. Because for the first time in their lives, the bill had finally come due. The lodge sold in 3 weeks. A private equity firm from New York bought it for $1.15 million cash. The closing was fast, clinical, and completely devoid of sentiment. I sat in Elena's office and watched the wire transfer hit the escrow account. First, the fraudulent loan was paid off, $100,000. Gone. Then, the reimbursement for the wedding, the deck, the plumbing, the car leases, $214,000 was transferred directly to my personal account. Then, the remaining equity was split according to ownership percentages. My parents and Tyler received their share after capital gains taxes and closing costs. It amounted to just under $200,000 total. It was enough to rent a decent apartment for a while, maybe pay off some credit cards. But their retirement nest egg, their legacy, it was gone. They had burned it to keep warm for one night. My share? $565,200. It hit my account with a quiet ping. No fanfare, just numbers on a screen. I used part of it to buy a condo downtown. A sleek, modern place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a concierge. It has 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for an office. I didn't block my family immediately. I waited until the money cleared. Then I sent one final email. It wasn't an explanation. It was a receipt. To the Vance family, enclosed is the final settlement statement for the sale of the lodge. All debts have been satisfied. The partnership is dissolved. Do not contact me. Then I blocked them. Everywhere. Phone, email, social media. I even changed my Netflix password just to be thorough. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that wedding. I think about the empty chair that should have been mine. For a long time, I thought my absence was a weakness. I thought it meant I didn't matter. But now I realize the truth. My absence wasn't a void. It was a gravitational force. By excluding me, they created a vacuum that eventually pulled their entire world apart. The empty chair at that table was the most powerful thing in the room. It was the silent witness to their greed, their entitlement, their fraud. They thought they could erase me and still keep my money. They thought they could have the party without the person who paid for it. They learned the hard way that you can't build a life on a foundation you stole. I stood on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. I was alone. I didn't have a family to call on Sundays. I didn't have a brother to text about memes. But I had peace. I had a home that was truly mine. And I had a bank account that no one else could touch. I took a sip of wine, a bottle, I bought myself, poured into a glass I owned, in a life I had audited and found correct. The balance was 0, and I was finally free. Have you ever had to audit your own family to get the truth? Share this story if you believe respect is the only currency that matters.